welcome. It's our second panel of New York Fashion Week, so also our second panel of the season. Thank you so much for joining me this early on a Sunday morning. It's pretty inhumane, but luckily we didn't get you up in the middle of the night to talk about the Alexander Wang show when it did actually happen. So we are reviewing it the next morning, live from London. But before we begin, I'll just let my wonderful large panel introduce themselves, but starting with you.
So I'm Katie Barron, and I'm an author and a journalist and an editor for Stylus, which is a creative intelligence agency.
I'm Natalie, Theo. I've got a blog called Fashion Chronicles, and I'm a stylist at Dressapy.
I'm Camilla Morton, and I'm a writer, just a writer.
Just a writer. I'm Maarten van Horst. I'm a designer.
And I'm Sasko, Bezovski, CEO of KTZ.
I want to start by picking on you, Maarten, because you were saying before we went live that you always stay up and watch the Alexander Wang show. You're saying that you love it. Why do you love it so much?
It's just everything. I don't know, it kind of gets you in the mood for Fashion Week. And I don't know, when I was doing my own shows, you would always look at the hair and shoes and the styling's always really great there as well, and music, who's on front row. I mean, everything with Alexander Wang for me is like
it's like a blockbuster show.
Yeah, it's like the full package as well, because it's amazing music and yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, I love Wang as well for that reason. Obviously there's only been a smattering of New York shows so far, but I think there's a bit of a tendency with the New York shows for you to look like, it looks like you're just looking at outfits basically. Yeah. You can almost the commerciality is so visible that you see, here's the evening wear, here's the kind of day dresses. And with Wang, you never feel like that. You feel like you're seeing a kind of consolidated effort. And so it gets the sort of juices flowing. Feels
like the
for
kind
me.
of the fashion part of fashion.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also, what girls are walking, and it's always very fierce, which is, great.
Yeah, he just does his own thing, and he always does his own thing. But actually, Friday was a good start.
Yeah,
with Jason Wu. It was also quite a good, nice, strong statement.
It had
to start
an energy
with
to
the
it,
season.
didn't it?
So it was a good lead into this one.
Yeah, on that note, I know I've had you two in before, but has anything stood out from New York so far? As you said, we've only had a smattering of shows, but there have been some really good ones so far.
I really liked Jill Stewart, actually. I thought there was something really enigmatic about the Jill Stewart collection. I thought there was a real sort of, almost that sort of slightly rocky, slightly gypsy, it felt like, there was a bit of mystery and a bit of darkness to it, which I felt, I thought it was pretty good show. Yeah.
I want to talk to you, Sasha, as our resident urban correspondent, because obviously KTZ, what you do so well is that kind of, like, there's such an urban influence to the brand, and it's one of your sort of big strengths. And whenever, I think it's a very overused and quite simplistic term in fashion, but whenever anyone talks about Alexander Wang, they're like, it's urban, it's New York, it's city. Yeah. Why is that such a kind of selling point? Why do people make that such a sort of part of DNA, and why we had this kind of urban explosion? Maybe that's what I'm asking.
I guess maybe, things is gone a little bit too serious in fashion. People have taken things to the limits of seriousness. And also we must remember that there's a young generation that follows up right behind. So what the young generation would expect is obviously to link themselves to a new label, to find their new interesting motifs and fun. And this is what Alexander Wang does really well. He translates the fun bit and injects it into his clothing really well.
It's interesting that you say motifs, because that's something you've done so well at KTZ, and that's something he does really well, that like parent advisory slogan. So there's always something, a little bit of branding, but done in a more interesting way. That's interesting. Would you guys say
there's also been there's also been always been a romance with that grittiness of New York. Yeah. So whether it's him doing it or another designer doing it sort of 20 years ago, there's always been that sort of little bit of appeal. And you kind of feel it's a coming of age for somebody, in a way, to sort of step into those clothes or to step into that whole mood.
Yeah, that's
there
such
is
a
that
good point.
Cool grittiness, and that's why we love that often used word. It's urban, but that's New York.
More downtown, I think.
Yeah, and he's showing in Brooklyn, which as we were laughing about and saying everyone was complaining about it, but so what?
It's very sleek, though.
Yeah,
why not?
I think you've got two nice. We've done two good shows so far, because Jason was uptown and now we're going downtown, and Jason is sort of like the next generation for the Oscar de la Renta customers, and this is giving something for this is sort of like his own twist on downtown Soho, or urban if you want to overuse that word, but also you know, the way he's set up his label and the way that he's doing Balenciaga, you know, he's taken such a run at his brand, and it's sort of become so global so quickly because he's tapped into that sort of energy much more than, you know.
When we say tapped into, I think what Sash said I found really intriguing, this idea of, you know, kind of a younger generation, and I wonder if this kind of the streetwear thing that we're seeing in fashion that's kind of everywhere is this extension of the kind of, you know, 10 years ago maybe people were talking about the daywear revolution, you know, everyone was doing daywear, and it seems like perhaps this is just a part of that. You know, a younger shopper isn't as engaged with a cocktail dress. You know, there's not that same formality in how people dress. There's much more.
But it's what happens when the Nike generation grow up.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are cool younger shoppers, and this is fabulous streetwear. It's quite glamorous, some of it.
It's
actually
polished.
super glamorous. So these girls aren't messing around. They're still sort of looking polished and cool in their own.
And the prices don't mess around.
No, the prices don't mess around.
I do think that changed because I think Alexander Wang, when he started, it was very much, you know, contemporary and that department. But now, I think also because he made a big mistake with Tea by Alexander Wang, because he was basically stealing his own customers. So that's why Alexander Wang now is much more luxurious and it looks much more expensive than what it used to.
Yeah, it was kind of cannibalising his own business.
Exactly. So I feel like there's a really big difference now between Tea by Alexander Wang and Alexander Wang mainland.
Exactly. I mean, I think, you know, we say it's downtown, but it's very luxy downtown. And I think where he's really smart is that he never just kind of simply replicates sportswear or kind of urban fashion in a way for, you know, for the catwalk. I mean, you know, there's some of the London shows, I mean, obviously much sort of more fledgling designers, but we like look at Nazir, you kind of see it in a much more sort of wholesale on the catwalk, and it's still great. But with Wang, it kind of goes through this whole sort of Wang filter,
twist,
and then comes out the other end, and all of a sudden it's incredibly luxury. I mean, if you look at the sort of material innovations there, I think, you know, you're really getting your value for money with that kind of fashion.
Yeah, but also that frustrates me so much because I think Alexander Wang has so much more potential than what we're seeing now from him, because as you say, the fabric manipulation, everything. Why aren't we seeing that at Balenciaga?
Yeah.
But I think
I don't get why he doesn't just bring that to Balenciaga.
But I think what he's doing for himself and what you do for Balenciaga, I think you have to go through such a political dance of people, of what commercial needs, of what the brand needs. I think you have to take time to find your feet. I don't think you can come in and knock down doors straight away.
And I don't think you should do the same thing either.
No, that's true.
What we should find out first is how much he spends on Balenciaga and how much he spends on his own collection. We spent 6 months building menswear collection, and certain stories we worked on, let's say, for like 2 years to puzzle them together and to come up with a product. Of course, when you see it, it looks great and it's easy, it's translatable, but it took us ages to build a collection. And then when it comes to the womenswear, let's say we will spend like 3 to 4 months because there is such a short time to come up with a womenswear idea. So, and I can see the differences between times being full time spent on one collection. So I'm sure that he works between the two cities, between Paris and New York, where his head offices are. But how much time can you put, and how much time can you take from the designer to inject into the second brand?
And how much leeway do you have in terms of experimentation with both houses? You don't know.
It doesn't have to be couture, because one of the important Balenciaga staples from Nicolas Ghesquière is the combat trousers.
But he's not doing the same thing as
No, exactly. But all I'm saying is, like, Balenciaga doesn't have to be a woman that goes to the opera.
No.
So do you think it's lacking complexity at the moment, Balenciaga?
Well, I think he's just overcomplicating things. And that's what I find so frustrating. Because if you look at the woman that used to wear Balenciaga, it's not a woman that goes to the opera.
No.
You know, it's such a different market. Yeah. And I think Alexander Wang has such amazing shoes, amazing accessories. Like, and if there's anyone that can do an amazing Balenciaga parka, for instance, you know, it's Alexander Wang. So
you'd rather see him focus more on the staples, like a great pair of boots, a great bag,
well, he'd be so great for Balenciaga if he just, you know, stop overcomplicating.
I know what you mean. It'd be interesting to see whether, with this collection Balenciaga, whether it becomes still more classical again, or whether actually it will come a bit closer. I mean, because you're right, maybe he's actually trying to make such a sort of firm dividing line between them and kind of create these sort of polar opposites that actually it will become more conservative, more sedate in a way. So we can't really tell.
I think we're being a little bit hard on the woman who goes to the opera, because I can tell you she's not the same as the woman who went to the opera sort of 20 or 30 years ago.
No, of course not.
So
But I do feel like one of the best sellers from Balenciaga was the combat trousers. You know, it doesn't have to be couture, like frilly dresses.
No.
But if he went and did a pair of combat trousers with his spin on it, it would be like, oh, look what he's doing.
No, but he can do a parka.
Yeah.
I mean, what other designer than Alexander Wang could do this urban Balenciaga girl? Because she used to be an urban.
Would you have rather have seen a different designer at Balenciaga?
No, I predicted that Alexander Wang was going to be at Balenciaga.
And you're happy with it?
Very happy.
Yeah.
But I hope he gets enough time, because
I think that's a
like
good point.
8 years ago, like designers had 3 seasons and then they were kicked out, you know?
Yeah.
Like look at Chloe, it was like one designer after the other.
We still see that a lot though. We were talking about that over the couture with the house, like, you know, even something like Vienna, you know, there's still this revolving door system where, you know, you come and straight away. Even
well, you're only as good as your last collection.
Yeah.
Because of the sales and everything, I mean, it's quite...
No pressure.
But I think the thing is with Balenciaga, there's so much expectation, there's so many backseat drivers that I think to start with, I mean, it'd be weird if you showed Balenciaga before Alex Wang. Like, imagine if Paris was before New York. I think it'd be weird to see his version of, I think it's really great that New York is where it is and that he starts with Alex Wang, because that's his undiluted who he is.
And I think credit to him, you haven't seen any sort of element of this becoming less focused or not, you know, it feels like this is still such his passion and he's really pouring himself into it. It doesn't feel like this is in any way an afterthought.
More so, probably.
More so his focus,
Liam, I think we might have lost this screen. Perfect, cool, because I was going to say it might be good to watch the show soon. Okay, cool. One question I do want to ask just before we have a look at it is what we think that a luxury shopper now wants when she's, you know, spending a lot of money. We talked a bit about on the Jason Wu panel, and it got me thinking a lot afterwards. You know, I think we throw these terms around quite loosely, you know, like kind of easy luxury, but what is a shopper looking for when she spends a lot of money on fashion? Is it something that's going to last for years and years and years, as we often say, or is it something that's going to stand out that season?
It could be twofold. Yes, it could be twofold. If she's going to spend a lot of money, absolutely it could be those investment pieces that she wants to last for seasons, or it could be those, for want of a better word, those one-off mad statement pieces that are just going to capture the imagination and the fantasy and step into that whole role of the season, and then you've done it and it's next. So it depends. Though, you know, there are women who've got fabulous extensive wardrobes who have to have that new look of the season. They wear it once, but it's just like a love affair with that piece, and then the next time it's the next piece they've got to have.
And what does Alex Wang do? Does he cater more to the former or to the latter?
I think when you look at his collections, he's so different from each other that I think it probably is. It's a little bit of both, but I think that's the look of the season, and then it's next. I mean, if you look at what he did last season with his, if we use the logo t-shirts, those cute little skirts, and if you look at the few little snips we've seen so far of this season, they're very different, and they're quite strong pieces, strong looks.
Do you agree with that, Camilla?
Yeah, I do. I do. To be honest with you, I was thinking what I did agree with and what I didn't agree with, and then I sort of went off into a little daydream, and I was, no, not in a rude way, but it's quite early.
Wow.
When I'm at a show, or when you go to a show, it's very different. When you're watching a show, you're thinking, what stands out, what is the message here, where is that? But when you're shopping, it's much more emotional. It's about
what do you want?
How you shop is your statement of who you are or what your personality is, and it's much more emotional. And you have to have those pieces that you think, oh my God, I want this now, it's going to change my life. And it's sort of like the Cinderella slipper complex. You have to have it, and you can't put into words why you want it. And it's, I know it sounds ridiculous, but you're expected to reinvent the wheel every season and create something that you just can't live without. And it's a bit insane to completely reinvent the wheel every season. So maybe you'll have a pump or a bag or something that works each season, but you've got to be seduced each season. If you're going to buy a piece from Alex Wang or a piece from Jason Wu, it's got to be something where you think, my God, I've never seen fur put on that way, or I've never, and fashion isn't going to change the world in many ways, but it's there to make you feel invincible or make you feel good or sort of empower you in some way. And so it's got to have something that just makes you think, yesterday I went and bought an Elia dress that I have been stalking for about 2 months, and it just got to the point where we just had to be together. And that is how fashion's meant to make you feel.
And but it's, think of the task for a designer. Each woman shops so differently. So you're going to get the cautious one who's been not so cautious, but she may have been stalking a piece for a while. She might wait for it to go on sale, for example. Yeah. Then you get the other one who simply just has to have that. Yeah. Then you get the other one who feels a little bit more comfortable buying, what should I be buying this season? What do I need? She likes to be told. You've got one guy or one girl or one woman, one designer having to think of all of these things as well as put their own stamp on it. And so what do we expect from them? Do they have to cater to everyone? That's why we have so many designers, I suppose, because you can pick and mix and take what you want from all of them.
I guess what I'm really intrigued by with someone like Alex Wang, where he does do something that is so kind of, some of the words we've been talking about, that kind of urban, that downtown, there's a quiet luxury to it, it's not this kind of, it's not really romantic. Like we talked about that romantic grit thing, but it's not poetic perhaps. And it's how a designer who works in that kind of a way inspires that kind of immediate lust that you get when you see something like an Elia dress or a McQueen piece. It's not kind of, it's a different kind of
love affair.
It's a bit more Phoebe Philo, I think. I was going to say Celine, but actually I mean Phoebe Philo, wherever she is.
Yeah, wherever she is.
I think,
yeah.
It's that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I think Alexander Wang is one of the few designers that still has an it shoe. Like you don't really see that a lot anymore.
No.
Like Chloe used to do it shoes every season.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I want that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You have to have it this season.
Absolutely. But I think that's his job now, to do the it shoe.
A little bit like actually Nicolas Gasquet and Marie-Amélie Sauvé used to do at Balenciaga, when they would kind of, the very forward thinking, whether it's the polka dot height or those sorts of things, where they would literally send things down the catwalk, whichever which you have a million copycats of.
Yeah, but I think more so Phoebe Philo at Chloe, when like her shoes were just incredible.
Yeah. I think Chloe was quite a lot of it collections though. If you look at it, you can if you flick back and look at every collection she did, everything is so kind of iconic from that. It's so ubiquitous now because it's been. But I guess that's the same with when we were talking about Balenciaga before. That's what was so strong about Nicolas Gasquet's collection. Like you look at the combat trouser one that you're talking about now. It's like spring summer 2007 or something.
Yeah, but everybody's got to start somewhere. I mean, Nicolas, when he started Balenciaga, that was a bit of a wobbly start. When Stefano started at YSL, that was a bit of a wobbly start.
No one's ever happy.
Everybody wants the next thing, and it's like when Tom Ford left Gucci. I remember I was covering the first collection after him, and there was a pause at the end of the show, and everybody was like crossing themselves, wondering how they were going to sort of do that. And I think you need a little bit of time. It's like if you go to get a coffee every morning, you get the same coffee, you go in, you get a latte, and then one day you suddenly change to espresso. You have to get used to the sort of like the movement of what you're doing.
Yeah, but the coffee's dangerous analogy, because if you don't have the same barista making it with love, you get upset. We had this discussion this morning.
We had this discussion this morning.
So that's actually quite a tough call.
But then don't you think there's always that little bit, like that little whisper in my head, and I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think designers, I think it's so cruel. Like we saw that so badly with Raf and Eddie, before they'd even started.
Yeah, but everyone loves him though. And
I know,
running to Saint Laurent boots, and he got panelled by the writers. And I'm like, guys, you're all going to be wetting yourselves to do
I know,
those
it does sell really well. But what I'm saying is like that idea that we all kind of hype it, and I feel so sorry for designers that they only get a few seasons, and that they haven't even done a collection. Everyone's talking about them. But then there's a little voice in my head that goes, but it's Balenciaga, and I kind of feel like whichever designer goes there, they know that there's that huge pressure on them, not just because of Nicolas Gasquet, but because of the position that Balenciaga always had.
Because of the position of the brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the thing is you don't get the job if you're not up to the job, or you get flicked.
And ultimately, it's the women shopping who might really be the dictators as to your future, because it's that bottom pound sign.
And the sales of Balenciaga, it's an interesting one, because when we say, like, what he's doing, it's very easy for us to say this. Nicolas Gasquet did this really well, but actually in terms of sales, there's more complexity than to what we're talking about. The accessories sold really well, and I think Alexander Wang, some of the bags that he's done already have been really spectacular. Perhaps the clothing hasn't been as kind of iconic as what we saw.
Well, the things what I love about his own line is that it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And it's
and it's unashamedly that.
Yeah, and that's what I miss at Balenciaga. You miss this like gutsy all or nothing collection.
It doesn't
you
feel
know?
like
Somehow
it's an
but
idea.
it's weird because I don't go to Balenciaga. I don't expect that from Balenciaga. I expect that from his own line, but weirdly enough, I go to Balenciaga and I don't expect that. I'm not going there to.
Yeah, but I think that's because it's a different machine.
Yes, that's why.
Like, you
feel
can't
like I'm
have
not
an
looking for the same
off-season. You have to. Anyway, let's go to New York.
Yeah,
Come
let's
on,
look
kids,
at
let's
it.
get out.
We're going to be here forever otherwise.
Let's see what he's done.
Yeah.
What shoes?
Oh, that leapt back into place. Okay, so we were saying before that it was in Brooklyn. And it was at the De Gaulle Greenhouse, which is a kind of a new event space, and it advertised itself as being kind of very like organic and all to do with nature, and it's all kind of got all this air purification and eco-friendly stuff. So it was very much a statement of
which they've completely ignored with entirely.
I was going to say, this is the least un-eco thing I'm
Yeah.
seeing right now.
It's not exactly the Eden Project, is it?
No, it's more Star Wars.
Yeah, no, that's fucking good.
Okay, we're going to have an exciting time.
Wow, this is the
That's
first time
cool.
we've had music.
Yeah, it's very futuristic Star Wars.
It's funny because I think the first few looks is exactly what I was missing in menswear this season. It's this utilitarian and that workwear. It's so cool.
Well, I think that's why the surprise hit of the menswear for me was Dior Homme, because everything was really kind of a little bit like that, like really utilitarian. And Rick Owens also did those kind of flak jackets that were kind of similar with like.
Well, this entire collection's quite, I was going to say mannish, but it's actually more boyish than mannish in a way. I mean, I think you'll see it more when you see some of the kind of anoraks and almost like Moonrise Kingdom, you know, scout capes coming out later. But I thought, I mean, this obviously compared to, I mean, obviously the last season obviously was spring, summer, and there was a sort of more of a kind of frippery about that. But I think, yeah, this is
I like the
mannish
complete
aspect of
contrast to
this.
it.
Yeah.
That it's just ditched that
Yeah.
one now and moved on completely.
It's so much less flirty.
Yeah, but this could be
But
a
it's quite
reflection
fierce
of his
and
state of
sexy.
mind. I mean, he's kind
It's
of
fierce,
doing
as Maarten
yeah,
was
he's
saying.
fierce.
But it also says a lot about his shoppers, because you know they're just going to switch gear and do the same thing and go for this.
But then I do think that coat that just came out there with the kind of neon collar, you could layer that over pieces from last season and it would still look fine.
I like that collar. I thought that was great.
What's your take, Sasha? What are you enjoying?
It's coming up.
You're like, I'm biding my time.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I didn't watch
I like
it in
this
advance.
I haven't seen it
didn't
either.
Pre-prep on this.
It is very boyish, actually, if you look at those looks. But I love this uniform thing
But
in
I like
fashion.
masculine tailoring on women.
British designers usually do uniforms so well because we all have to wear school uniform, but it's really nice to see an American designer do it in a really interesting way.
Well, here some of it's a bit more
that's
kind
a
of
cut-out
military
boot.
than school uniform, isn't it?
And also it's so reflective of the weather, you know, a lot of the tweets were saying this, it's like absolutely awful in New York at the moment, and everyone's just wearing boots and coats, and then this is a collection which is basically entirely about boots and coats, which feels very kind of practical.
I like the
quite
side
nice
gloss
textures
lacquered
again.
hair against all the textures in the clothes.
The comb over.
It's a nice
Comb over.
It is though, isn't it?
It's like a helmet.
Yeah,
See,
it's
there's
like
his
a
oversized. He did that at Jason with the oversized coat.
He
Remember on
does
the slinky
really
dinkies?
nice.
See, it's got
fabrics.
such this. I really like the schoolboy thing.
Yeah, I
going
like it,
through it. I
it's
think that's
cool.
actually very cool. But actually, when I saw this, and I kind of actually, I mean, obviously the shorts are very tailored, but there's also something almost of like the board short about them.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
I think there are lots of kind
That
of,
was nice.
you
that
know,
knitwear
Good
part.
knitwear.
Yeah,
This is
your
your
favourite?
favourite?
that was really good.
Yeah.
That was very interesting.
That's really interesting.
This stuff
Very
looks
nice.
amazing in like social media pictures and catwalk pictures in
Absolutely.
video.
You want
It's
to just
incredible.
touch those.
And also that's going to sell like hot, you know, everyone talks about
That's
the
the
skit
jumper,
knits,
huh?
like,
Yeah.
you know, the statement sweater, but that's so amazing.
Nice colours.
same for the footwear.
It feels like a really practical collection in some ways, actually. There's not many pieces that are coming out, unlike last season where you're kind of like, but who would that suit? Who would actually wear that? With this, you can see it being quite, kind of very buyer-friendly.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah.
like unisex.
Yeah.
Somehow. It's like there's the things that probably men can wear.
Men can
recently.
wear
Yeah.
it. But I
The
think
way
that's
it
more a
looks.
reflection of
Some
how
of the
we,
bigger
All
jackets.
looks- Yeah,
Yeah.
and those jumpers.
but that's how women, just think of the number of women who buy menswear because they feel like, you know, they want a cooler
Across
coat.
Some of
that
it's
you
better
can get.
made.
Like the kind of girls that would buy Supreme and wear like a cool Supreme bomber would probably wear some of this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that definitely would.
And then I've said it millions of times now, but I'm just frustrated. like put this in, put something like this in Paris with this caliber and these volumes, these shapes.
So would you want to see all of this on a Balenciaga runway?
I don't know, why not?
You might.
The question is why not, you know?
I like his sort of female version of the cravat. It's sort of like a modernized version of a man's cravat, neck scarf, if that's what it is.
So I quite like the kind of holsters as well, and the sort of, I think there's like a bum bag in here at some point
like
as
a
well.
cool bum bag.
Yeah.
And I was reading, I think someone tweeted about some of the jackets, all the little spaces are for things like, a cigarette lighter, like a little notebook.
Yeah.
It's like really, it's not things like,
Like
it's
not bullets.
Proper urban utilitarian, yeah.
My moleskin.
Yeah.
And my mobile.
Yeah.
I think he's got lots to say in the coming years.
Yeah.
He's just started and he's very young, and you can see it each season he does it better and is maturing in a very good way. So I think a lot more to come from him. I think this is probably just the very beginning.
It's interesting actually because we talked about him kind of quite critically and really pulled everything that he's done sort of apart in a sense, but then he's so young. I think that's worth saying.
He's so confident.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting if you look at the hems on some of these as well, that you almost get this sort of cowboys and Indian thing. Because I think there's a lot of sort of
raw skin edge.
nods towards being American and being an American designer
definitely,
actually through this collection.
I
think in lots of different
Balenciaga has
ways.
done a very good move by taking him into their house, considering he's young and is going to mature very well.
Yeah.
It's a very successful business.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely the right way
move.
forward.
Definitely. It seemed like it was a kind of a move for the future, they were planning ahead with that, I think.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I'm interested in what you were saying actually though about this American thing, because we talked about this a lot on the Jason Wu panel as well, this idea that like there's less of a confused identity in New York because an American designer knows that Americans will buy their clothes, whereas in London, designers don't actually know that. It's not going to be Londoners that buy their stuff.
I thought with this that he was kind of using this idea of being an American designer and America in general in quite a humorous way as well. I mean, it's not a kind of ha-ha, wear my clothes and be funny, but just his own kind of in-jokes in a way, because if you look, you've almost got like the American tourist in the bum bags, in the anoraks, you've got the board shorts in some ways. I mean, he's from California.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a lesson to that. And then even with the sort of cowboy style boots and shoes and things like that, which actually even reflects back on his menswear show.
Yeah.
So I thought, it was kind of subtle and it was done in a way that was, just this sort of in-joke way. And I think that's something that's so great about him, because that just affirms that he does have that sort of vibrancy and that youthful, he's very confident, but he's not afraid to have a few jokes in there.
He's a little bit insolent always, which is really great. I think you need a little bit of kind of humour. And what do we think of the whole production? We were talking before about what do we think of the set and the way the whole show's been done?
I think it's really
I love it.
slick.
It's nice and slick, it's futuristic, but it's cool.
Do we want to be
it's
this
not
woman?
nat future. Yeah, I'd wear some of those pieces.
This side of the panel.
I mean,
do you want to be this woman, Maarten?
I think he's a designer that will sort of like stand the test of time. Like he's very relevant to now
He's
as
shown
much
that.
as he has made his mark on the landscape. And I think that this, a bit like say a Claire Cardell sportswear, I think he's referencing the American dream as much as very much who he is.
This bit is really good. It's fascinating.
Well, thanks for spoiling it.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
I just didn't want everyone to thought it was over and stop looking. Spoiler alert. Sasko was saying how young he is. Maarten, why do you think he's been so successful? Really put you on the spot there.
I don't really exactly know his background, but the thing is, if you're going to do clothes that fit in the contemporary department, you need a very good infrastructure when it comes to production. Like for instance, I think his knitwear has always been consistently good. It's about manufacturing, it's about keeping up a good reputation as well with,
I think it's, as Kay said the other day, I think particularly in America, Kay said, and I think it's dead right, in America you're only ever one paycheck away from being homeless, and I think you have to have that hunger, and I think he's really worked hard. I mean, look at the
but
well, just to explain what's happening here,
techniques.
it's a heat-activated fabric. So what's happening is it's changing from black to colour as it's exposed to like the warm lights and the heat. So that's why it's not on the stream. It could be lighting.
Yeah.
But that's why they all came out black and they're all going into these multicoloured shapes.
But he's doing something that every designer has to do every season. He's tapping into that youth culture because whether we like it or not, that's always the next big movement. That's always determining what's coming next, and it's always a huge influence. But he does it very well.
Well, it's forward thinking without feeling like he's getting some kind of set of management consultants.
And anyone can wear it.
Yeah, because realistically, I mean, let's be honest, with the price tag of these clothes, it's not young people buying these clothes largely, but it is people that are older and have the money to buy, but that want to feel like they're still relevant, basically.
I think
don't even think it's young, I think it's youthful.
I think youthful is and everyone wants that market.
Everybody wants
the flavour of that market.
I think it's about maintaining relevance, even when you're in that luxury, which is obviously why Balenciaga would have employed him, I think.
I mean, I like the idea of heat activating, and I like the laser cutting. I think I'd be very careful as to where I placed the heat sensitive.
And what mood you were in.
I have to say that this whole like performance bit that he always needs to do, it's nice that he has this like childlike enthusiasm. It's also a cringe fest. You know, because this whole heat activated thing.
I think that's awesome.
It's like every student does that in second year, you know? It's like, we've all seen it. And the laser
to go to a show and have a little bit of a spectacle at the end is quite exciting. It's quite fun to be watching it live if you're there.
I think the pieces looked great.
But that's not student heat activated.
No,
that is like good heat activated.
I did think they were amazing pieces, and I thought the colours and the cut is great, but I think from a buy point of view, you'd want to.
It's probably going to be more embedded in the fabric.
They're just showpieces.
I think that's a showpiece.
I mean,
I think he's dragged it out to Brooklyn. Half the editors had to get a boat
his invitation was
heat
heat sensitive. I think you put your hand over it or something.
Did he give you an invite? That was nice.
Yeah, he sent it by Uber.
You up,
I know.
doesn't he?
Oh, that's
so
cute.
Sweet. Yeah.
Well, at least we know they were warm in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I was desperately concerned about the man in the bobble hat.
Oh.
Liam's done. Done with Alex Wang.
Yeah.
I've seen enough of this. So you're not a fan of the heat tech, Leo?
Yeah.
Maybe he's had a bad experience with heat tech himself at some point.
Have you?
No.
He's like, keep me off the fan.
Yeah.
So were we impressed by the Alex Wang? It seems like we all enjoyed it.
It's hard not to be impressed by him.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting thing to say actually, because it's hard not to be impressed by him. It's that kind of thing where love it or hate it.
He doesn't mess around, and he delivers.
Even the sequencing is really good, I think, with his show. The way it goes from kind of almost sort of slowly from sort of three phases from this, where you've got the kind of uniform and the military kind of styling, and then it goes through into the kind of softer, the sort of capes and the silks and things like that, and then you have the sort of almost the ski wear.
Yeah.
And there's something really smooth and really slick about it. And again, I don't sort of feel like I'm being sold to while I'm watching this. I don't feel like I'm seeing day
when
to
he is
night.
Such a designer that sells as well.
Yeah, I don't feel I'm kind of receiving it in that kind of, you know, women's mag way, when you get that kind of, here's your day to night pieces, I don't feel like I'm being dictated to. I feel like it's a much more, I'm sort of consuming something in a much more autonomous way, I guess.
But there is that blur between day and night anyway. There's no concept of that anymore.
Loads of designers still show like that. I completely agree. I don't think women dress in a day to night way, but
a lot of women shop that way actually, because they sort of thinking about how far their money's going to stretch, and sometimes they don't think about it, but they do shop that way.
I think I sort of think day to night, actually.
I think there's
She isn't her fantasy life.
You know what? It's not the most wonderful way to present something, and you'd never want that on the catwalk, but unfortunately, in a sort of sales point of view, women do actually, they want to see how that works.
Well, if you go on like Net-a-Porter and Match, you still see a huge amount of, evening.
Oh, but there is a blur, and I love the Americans for doing. Night is perfect for day in America. They do beautiful nighttime glamour as a daytime look. Who cares?
And let's face it, Americans are so slickly put together. I mean, sometimes English people look like they've been dragged through a hedge backwards. I think the casting on Alex Wang's, the sort of like the total package is what really sort of like slicks it up.
And you said something about the music earlier.
Yeah.
We were chatting about.
I think the music was very sharp. Very much what's happening out there right up to the beat.
I mean, they're really good
from
new
the very
faces.
start. Ending was fantastic.
Yeah,
The
no, I
ending
think the
part
ending
was
was
very
amazing.
good. I think the whole execution of the show was just...
And the sort of like slightly
Yeah.
limited colour palette with the shot blocks, I think it was great.
It was like Luxe Uniqlo.
Good boy.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that sounds libelous, but yeah,
No,
if
I'm
you want
really
to
kidding.
go with
I
that.
thought it was absolutely amazing.
Tumbleweed.
But that's the thing with like, there's outerwear and tailoring and good knitwear.
I mean, I think when I
That's
was saying
what you
day to night, so I think there was a confusion about what I meant was, rather than day to night as in dual purpose, I meant you're not seeing, here's your day wear,
Yeah,
here's
so
your
then,
evening wear.
and then here's
Yeah.
the sort of wedding
Yeah.
dress.
Well, it's
Yeah,
very
exactly,
different.
yeah.
It's not
The
a
big finale
salon
of the
show,
wedding dress,
it's,
yeah, exactly.
it's a show spectacle.
Yeah.
And he also captured the New York feeling. Let's not forget this show happens in New York, you know,
Yeah.
where
And
when
we
you're in
like
Paris, you're in a
You're in a
uncharted
different world.
territories.
Yeah.
So this is what's currently is happening in New York. That's why we feel it's so strong and
Yeah.
we're really, in a way, in approval of. And even the music, even the whole atmosphere around it is just great. You know,
Yeah, well, you have to.
Do we think this could work in another system? When we were talking about Balenciaga, I could see this in Paris as well. I think that would what would be its strength in Paris, how New York it feels. It would be such a kind of, it's almost more, you expect it more in New York.
Sacre bleu.
What did you say earlier?
Paris
that-
feels New York. Oh mon Dieu.
It actually looks even better in some of the pictures, isn't it? It's incredible. See, a cargo pant. There you go, Martin. You have it.
Exactly, I wasn't making it up. And you say it was just one season Balenciaga, but it's one of those
No, it's his
things that
thing. His
it's
cargo.
always in the
Yeah,
showroom.
Yeah.
So.
No, but you know that season where he did all those kind of the ones that were. It's just if you look at it now, it looks like Gap because it was so ripped off that like you've seen it everywhere. But those really kind of top-heavy ones, that was amazing.
Yeah, but you know it's fashion nostalgia. You got to let it go. Let's see what he does this season for
Fashion's got to look
Balenciaga.
forward.
But I think you have to be a bit. I think that Balenciaga is one of those brands that you have to be nostalgic about. You have to kind of.
No.
Definitely,
You don't
but you need to
No, when
just
Nicolas
see what he
Ghesquière showed
does.
in New York, showed Balenciaga in New York, like there's nothing nostalgic about that, and it was so strong.
I think when you get nostalgic and intimidated by a brand, then you've
It's
lost.
trouble.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
kind of being consumed by the weight of their
Yeah.
codes in a way, and
Yeah.
they are quite restrictive codes if they're.
When an
Yeah.
But
actress
I think
plays,
the shopper has to feel that way about Balenciaga. Perhaps not the designer there, but I feel like the shopper has to feel nostalgic and kind of almost in awe of Balenciaga. I think that's something about the way when you buy Balenciaga.
You
There's a
have
lot
to
of
have-
special and
yeah, you have to have a sense of awe, but a bit like if you're playing Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor, you don't want to do a pastiche of it. You want
Yeah.
to be yourself.
Yeah.
And the
So
shop is growing and changing.
you have
It's
to
new.
do
They're
a
all
new
new. They
version
don't-
of it.
Yeah,
They
but
don't
it's
know the
modern.
old ones.
No.
It's like when you hear someone saying, "Did you know that this song was done once by another band?" It's ridiculous.
Because
Yeah.
But they don't know-
Because being in awe
It's
will make you
changed.
just completely overwhelmed, whereas it's, you know, your analogy, it's respect rather
Yeah.
than being in awe in a way.
You
isn't
almost
it?
need a little bit of arrogance to say, "Okay, I know what it's about, but now I'm
Yeah.
going to just give it my flavour."
You can't be tiptoeing around sort of things like that. I think you know this is a really confident show, and I think that he's battening down the hatches to do, I hope, some really exciting things at Balenciaga.
Yeah. Well, the confidence
Must
has come
be.
through in his own shows. You know, a lot of people, some people even called last season kind of arrogant because of all that Wang logoing on stuff, you know, all that laser cut and the punch.
Primark loved it.
But I think that the confidence
I like
is coming through in
those
his own
pieces
stuff,
more
which
now.
is really nice to see.
Yeah, I think
Because we can see them
without
properly,
the
no? With our
performance,
they
I
look
think it would be
beautiful.
nice.
So you're less concerned by the heat tech now, Camilla. You're
They
No,
look
I'm
lovely.
still concerned.
But you would probably not sell it as a heat tech. It would probably be sold
No, it
with
would be
that
panels, wouldn't
textured.
it?
But looking like that already, it's not going to change colour.
No, because what if you went out
We're
and
gonna
it
have to
was
go and have a
under
look.
your
It was
arm or you sat
Or you were
on
in a
it?
bad
what if you
mood.
sat on it?
But what if you were in a bad mood?
And you'd get up and your bum would be pink.
Bum
and
shape.
then you'd be like
Yeah.
a baboon. Alex Wang.
Yeah, you'd
bum
have like
balloon.
a patch up your bum.
I'm
So it'd
sorry,
be
that would
like-
be a performance.
No, but it'd be like
But
sitting
honestly,
on a,
can you imagine?
yeah, it'd be like sitting on a
but
bench
does-
that says wet paint. It would just be.
I would have liked that.
Would it
Just see that
change
in the
according to your mood though? If you got really fiery and heated up?
I wore.
It is like a
I
mood
wore
ring.
a mood necklace and it exploded on me. So this, I think, might
You'd be
be.
naked by the end of the day.
Well,
Well, that would make an impression. On that note, I think we should look forward to the other things that are happening at New York today.
So, well, there's two strands. Looking forward, has this made us excited for Balenciaga? Are you feeling, you're feeling excited? You think it's a great appointment, don't you?
You can't write him off before he's done something. You've got to feel excited.
No, but we can feel cautious. I think Maarten's feeling a little bit like...
Oh no, I just hope he gets enough time.
Okay.
You know, I hope this whole like 3 seasons thing is not relevant anymore, that he gets enough time to get this confidence, because it's only his confidence that produces amazing shows like this.
So we want more confidence.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice note to end on.
Confidence.
Have confidence.
Believe in yourself.
I think he's got it. I think he has all of that. I don't think there's anything showing there that's telling me he's worried.
I don't think America is ever lacking confidence.
No. Yeah, I don't think it's a problem area for him, is it?
No.
Okay, so don't have any more confidence. You got enough. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very fun. Let's all go buy some heat tech.
Yeah.